Okay, so the next thing we need to start thinking about now that we've done the interviews is making sure that we get down to our post-interview review phase. Okay, so we've just conducted our interviews, we've asked all open and closed questions, we've gone through the whole process. Now what we need to do is to make sure that we've really accurately recorded what happened. So the first thing we need to do is make sure that we write any interview notes. Sorry. Okay, and we get down exactly what was covered in the interview as quickly as possible. The reason being is that we don't want to rely on memory later, particularly after we've gone through a whole bunch of interviews. The conversations start to get confused. If you've done 4 or 5 or many interviews through the course of the day, you're not going to remember the specifics at the end. So what you need to do is straight away sit down, even in 5 minutes, and just make sure you take your notes right then and there. Anything important, anything that stood out, or your key findings need to get down straight away. If you start to get an emerging hypothesis, so you had the interview and you felt that was pretty good, any other feelings or thoughts that you get at the time, put them straight down. All right, or what you want to do there is start to think about how it all fits together. So the interviewee or the candidate has already given you some information by way of a resume. They're giving you details already. So what you really want to do is go, well, the interview you just had, did that line up with what you what you expected? Did they give you a resume saying they were a great salesperson, then when you got them in the room they were a little bit quiet? Or do you see other opportunities for them? Or what is it that you saw? Take those notes straight away. Start also thinking about any gaps that occurred. If you get to the end of the interview and realise, hang on, we haven't asked this or we haven't asked that, or that was a bit vague and ambiguous, that would be a good time to take down a note straight away so that someone else can start to chase that up for you later on. Okay, because one of the things is, as I say, once you've gone through a whole bunch of different interviews, it gets really hard to try and remember the detail. Okay, 8 interviews on a day is not necessarily uncommon, and you're just not going to remember what it was. So make sure you get into your post-interview review. You've thought about any gaps that came out of it. As I say, so you're looking for, what are the key notes? So what occurred to you straight away? What was your hypothesis? Do you reckon the person fits, doesn't fit, or what you saw lines up with what you expected? Consider the evidence that you had. Did the interviewee seem like what was on the resume? And then lastly, any gaps. Okay, because what you might have is you might have someone ring up post-interview and say, hey, look, thanks for the interview, just wanted to clarify these things, whatever it happens to be, okay? So it just gives you a bit more information there. All right, so that's what we need to do the minute we finish the interview, and this is just the instant actions to take, all right? Not that's the end of the subject, but it just gives us those details so that later on we can go back and have a look at how the whole thing comes together. So now we move on to, if we've done all the interview process, we need to start thinking about now, if we're doing a review, we need to start thinking about, how does this whole thing come together? So our format for review is pretty straightforward. Okay, we need to start thinking about, how did the process work for us? And there's a couple of different things we look at in that. We'll start to look at interview notes. Okay, we'll look at all the interview notes that we've taken, and we need to start considering those. Candidate profiles. Because we want to look at a couple of different things here. Location, dates and times. Okay, we need to also think about, what key findings did we come across? Okay, and then it moves on to, the situation and the history. We need to start thinking also about, your items for discussion. Pen dying. Okay, and also about improvements and approvals. Okay, so look, there's a whole bunch of different things that go into the interview process, okay? So when we're starting to do the review mechanism, we're thinking about the interview notes. Did we allow ourselves the opportunity to write good notes? Did we record information that was useful? Candidate profiles. Were we asking the right questions to get the right type of candidates and the right profiles that fit? And was our process suitable for ensuring that we had the right data? Okay, so are we asking the right questions? Are we getting the right facts? Location, dates and times. Did we set good times for interviews? Was the location the right one to use? Could people find it? What was the feedback out of that? Would we use the same location again? And also the date and times, did we pick a nice variety of dates and times, or were we a bit limited there? We start to summarise the key findings also out of our interviews and start to think about, well, what emerged, what was good about it, what was bad about it, what would we do different next time. We also have to have some sort of guideline or understanding of, well, what was the situation in the history? So why were we running the interviews in the first place? What was it in the business that meant that we had to advertise that position? And also, was there really enough time to source a good candidate? Were we doing things on the fly on a Friday? We panicked and realised we needed people? Or was there a bit of warning that went into that? And if there was warning, did we use the time well? We also need to think about any other items for discussion that we might have. Okay, so, anything else about the process, anything else about the candidates, anything that we discussed with the candidates, what else sort of arose through the process. And we also need to think about what improvements can we then make to any of these things, and also thinking about the approval process that goes back to the beginning. First of all, from approving the position to be advertised in the first place, all the way through to the selection and ultimate approval of the person that got selected and escalated through the system. All right, so there's a whole lot of things that we need to review, and this starts pretty much once the interviews are over. So we're going through this not only to select the candidate, but also to think about in the future, what can we do? Where can this go? All right, so that's just the sort of things we might cover in a review process, as I say, at the end of the process where we're selecting the person, but also thinking about how we can do this a little bit better the next time, because that's the aim, to try and continually get our interview process as good as we can get it to make sure that we're finding the right candidate for the right job and moving forward, okay? And if we keep at the end of every interview cycle, keep improving the process, make sure our questions are better, find any things that we've missed, make sure it's the right place and time, etc. We're going to keep attracting the right talent, and that's going to make things worthwhile and massively increase the benefit to us of having a good recruitment system. All right, cool.